In a newly released excerpt from her upcoming book, Full Disclosure, Stormy Daniels describes intimacy with Donald Trump as laying there, annoyed that she was having sex with a, quote, guy with Yeti pubes and a dick like the mushroom character in Mario Kart. Hey, Stormy, any chance we could notch down the disclosure, just a little bit? Maybe some disclosure or, the right amount of disclosure that won't make you throw up in our mouth? Thanks.
A new report says Wall Street salaries are at their highest since the 2008 economic crisis. Well, it's nice to see good things happen to people who forced your sick grandma out of her home.
At last night's 70th annual Primetime Emmy Awards, Henry Winkler finally won an Emmy and joked that he wrote his acceptance speech 43 years ago. So that explains all the racial slurs. Hey.
Last weekend was the independence anniversary for Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. As a celebratory gift, the United States considered giving them their children back.
And we have two punchlines for this one. And finally, former Sesame Street writer Mark Saltzman has confirmed that the characters Ernie and Bert are indeed a gay couple. Well, now we know what killed Mr. Hooper. And more surprising is Saltzman's revelation that Mr. Snuffleupagus likes to watch. No. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, can you ever hear this song the same way again? Welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt. We've got the whole gang assembled here. Charles and Galicia back from Alaska.
Hello.
And just like when our friend Scott was up in Alaska, I'm sure you had lunch/brunch with Sarah and Todd Palin a couple of times.
Oh my gosh, I did not.
Oh, I really thought you were going to.
I was at the buffet one too many days, probably tell. But every stop along the way, I kept thinking, the woman who was the governor of this place was going to be the vice president of the United States. This could not have been more different from the whole rest of the United States. I mean, the entire state has like 1 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not even. Like half that.
I mean, it's closer to everywhere in Canada, basically, than it is to the United States.
And Russia.
Yeah, I had to take my passport and go through Canada on one of the excursions. I just couldn't believe that anybody would think that she was prepared or
I don't think anybody did. That was the problem.
Look, at one point somebody thought John Edwards was going to be vice president, so clearly no one knows anything. Tamra Brown.
Hi. I haven't gone anywhere.
Ever?
I've been here.
Yeah, in the studio.
I've been
Sweeping up. Yeah. And Scott Moore.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, that's it. Just some hey
back.
guys. All right.
Back
So,
from Cuba.
Back from
well,
Cuba.
yeah. Well, we covered that while you were
bit,
away.
yeah.
We didn't really talk that much about it, though. It's there's always so much to talk about.
Scott tried to convince us that communism works.
And Cuba's proof.
I'm socialism. Come on, socialism. Just look at Cuba.
Wait, hold on. Let's not start
No, I'm
using
just
them in
kidding.
the same sentence.
Just
I don't know, like Jim Carrey, it was a little over the top with that, like, claim socialism, like, whoa, buddy, whoa, hey,
There's this
we should be careful.
hilarious clips I've been enjoying of Vin Scully, the renowned renouncer of the LA Dodgers for decades. He is now passed, but there are these.
No,
clips
he's
of
just
him.
retired.
He's retired.
He's just retired.
Oh, he's not.
He's
He's
still
alive?
alive,
He's
but
still.
he's retired.
Yes.
I didn't know Vin
He's
Scully was still
enjoying.
alive.
Yes,
Okay.
he's enjoying retirement.
My bad.
By the way, neither did Vin Scully.
My
He
bad.
didn't know he was alive.
You just reminded him that.
Okay. Well, anyway, there are these clips of him like in the middle of a play, just randomly railing on socialism.
Yeah. Anytime there was a Venezuelan player, he would talk about it.
How
There's two
socialism
things that he
never
didn't
works.
like: Venezuela and beach balls. Because why would you come to the ball game just to hit around a beach ball? Also,
that was my favorite part of the Dodger games.
well, that's
that and
because
that I would
I
get
hate-
junk food
I
every
hate
inning.
because you're not there for the sport. That would probably be the
I was like
point.
10.
Well, there you go.
I still like it now. What are you talking about?
That's a great
Well,
excuse.
now.
Anyway, believe it or not, we didn't come here to talk about doing the wave at Dodger Stadium, but that'll be next week.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to talk about, and we have the accusations against Brett Kavanaugh, and there's a lot sort of contained within that story. You know, we have the sort of the anonymous nature of the allegations that were initially teased by Dianne Feinstein. Teased, not a great word, but that is what she did. You know, she sort of was like, yeah, I've got a thing that I'm not going to talk about. And I guess the initial question was, why did she have it for so long? And then supposedly Christine, who's all of a sudden last name I forget.
Ford.
Thank you. It's a car. Should be easy to remember. Christine
But
Ford.
it's hyphenated.
Yeah.
Blassie.
Ford.
Yeah. So she
just trying to help
originally
you out
wanted
with
to
that.
remain anonymous, and I think that was part of it. And then there just was so much speculation, she stepped forward. So that's unpacking part of the story. And to, look, Brett Kavanaugh says that he wasn't at the party. He says it doesn't happen. And obviously there's a lot of different ways that people are reacting to this, but I think that, Chuck Grassley kind of being the opinion that sort of matters the most. He's like, well, we have to talk to both of them. It's like, yes, let's hear her story, because you definitely had some voices. These were not elected official voices. They were just like, enough already. Let's just confirm the guy. It's taken too long. Why did this come up so late? So I find that
great Mitch McConnell.
There are always exceptions, but I find that the great majority of reaction is, look, we don't know. Let's find out more. And I'll start with you, Chelsea, because you've been gone the longest. What do you think, sort of, about the allegations, the reaction to them, and we'll go from there.
Well, I first start with, why would somebody make this up? What would really benefit her? It sounds like she is not somebody who's seeking the limelight.
Sure. I mean, I
She's
can understand why a person
professor.
would make it up, but it doesn't. You're wondering why this woman in particular would make up this story. Why somebody would want to put themselves through
Right.
the scrutiny of the allegation. There's a lot of reasons why people would make something up, but in this instance, the question is, why are you making this up now?
Well, I mean, apparently this isn't the first time that she's talked about it. She talked about it in 2012 in a couples therapy session, although didn't use his name.
Right.
But there are notes contemporaneous to it, which would be a fun exception to the hearsay law, but we're, can't get legal here because the statute of limitation has long passed. So there's not any legal consequences for Brett Kavanaugh here, except for perhaps, maybe, he'll be voted down. But as for why she waited, I mean, I think it makes sense to me. Like, why do you want to go through all this? Part of you feels like you have to say something because it's important, but the other part of you is like, I really don't want to do this to myself and to my family. So
Yeah,
I don't blame
sort
her
of,
for being reluctant.
That's what we heard in the wake of some of the first Harvey Weinstein accusations. We're like, why are they coming out now? Well, because they were never going to come out. But then all of a sudden it started to seem like, well, other people are talking about it. Let me sort of back up what they're saying. Not that that's the instance here, but I think a lot of times, sure, no one wants to actually share that.
I mean, I think it's so fascinating how it's happening now. It's kind of like a Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill, like 2.0.
Yeah, it's a sequel,
but
yeah.
in the day of Me Too, will it change anything? It'll be fascinating to see how it goes down.
Right. And I guess to the Judiciary Committee's credit, they're trying to get in touch with her and they want to schedule her. And what I was reading earlier today, and let me know if that's changed.
Who, Ford?
Ford, and they haven't actually heard back from her.
I saw articles as saying that she was going to speak or testify on Monday or Tuesday. I've seen both.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that what I had seen was I wasn't sure that they had gotten in touch with her,
Yeah,
but they
there's
were
no-
willing to talk to her.
There's no confirmation yet that she will appear. And I saw an interview today with Representative Norton, who was one of the women who was backing Anita Hill back in 1991. And so she said in this interview today, like, please do this for Anita Hill, do this for me, do this for, all of the women of yesteryear who weren't in the position that we possibly are now to be believed and heard. And, things are different even from 3 years ago. I think the amount, I've been really, I don't want to use the word impressed, but sort of surprised at the Republican males, even President Trump, who is saying, let's let her speak, let's let him speak, let's have let's have an investigation, rather than just immediately discrediting her and immediately, aside from like Orrin Hatch, who's saying she must be mistaken, and the old just
never going to be
never
going to
change, never going to understand.
Yeah.
But the sort of willingness and somewhat open-mindedness, even with that, feels a little bit of a stretch. But that a lot of people that I wouldn't necessarily expect to be so are giving her the benefit of the doubt and want to hear what she has to say and want to see a thorough, let's see this played out and give her an opportunity to state her case.
Scott, in addition to all that, your thoughts on President Trump just saying how badly he feels for Brett Kavanaugh in all of this. And look, obviously you want to say that if for some reason she is mistaken, it didn't happen, then sure, you can feel bad for him. But that's not how he put it. He's just the fact that he has to go through this is why he feels bad for him. But sort of the way that everything has played out so far, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, I don't think Trump has any other feelings, so I don't.
Well, I don't think he has. No, he doesn't have feelings.
He
period.
understands even feeling bad. He doesn't understand that he's just trying to equate some kind of human emotion there. But it's the same thing with Paul Manafort. He feels bad for the guy. The whole thing is, from his perspective, is ridiculous anyway. So I don't take it.
I think the feeling bad for is because he can kind of put himself in that person's
Right, 'cause
shoes,
he knows
kind
what
of.
He doesn't feel any man should
Yes.
have to go through that type of humiliation.
It's just. I mean, seriously, yeah. He feeling bad for him is just ridiculous. The thing that strikes me on both sides are, to Tamara's point, it's like these Republicans that are sort of like saying, "Oh, let's hear her side." I think they're put up against a wall, so they don't really have a choice right now because they have two Republican senator women that they have to try to get their votes, and they're already on the fence, especially Lisa Murkowski, because of some of Brett Kavanaugh's views on, First Nations rights and stuff like that, which a big part of her constituency is. So I already think that he has issues with some Republican senators already. And I think if they look to see that the Democrats, even the red state Democrats that are running for re-election that seem to be in pretty safe position, are feeling more comfortable to oppose him, means that they have no room for error. So for them, I think it's a political calculation, and also knowing about, the midterms coming up in less than, 6 weeks, that they have really... They have to do that. So I hate to sound jaded on that, but I feel like they really had no other choice but
So they didn't do this from the kindness of their heart and their transformed conscience.
They're transformed, yeah. I think it's more of knowing that they have two women senators that they have to keep on their side, and knowing that they've pretty much lost any other red state Democrats, and knowing that the midterms that are already going to be bad enough for them could be substantially worse if they know that women would go out in droves, especially white educated women too, that would go out and vote for the Democratic candidates.
But I do still think that 3 years ago they wouldn't have had that concern. Like the fact that they need to sway two women is possibly wouldn't have had to do that a few years ago. It's still very slow progress.
Right.
No,
A few years ago, they would have been like, "Oh, you need to convince Lisa Murkowski buy her some new shoes."
Yeah,
That's the sort of
exactly.
thing that you probably would have heard. What? This is the old days. It's not now. We're woke now. All right. This is a different world that we live in.
Just get her a new shade of lipstick and she'll be fine.
Wow.
So one of the things is that the FBI is apparently not investigating further, despite the Democrats' demands, and they're sort of not really boycotting, but they're not supporting these hearings. But to Chuck Grassley's point, he says, look, if I don't hear back, or we don't hear back from Christine Blasey Ford, we're not going to hold the hearings. So obviously that puts tremendous pressure on her to begin with. She was already under pressure. Now it's like, look, we're not even going to talk about this if you don't come and testify. And, I think the interesting thing here is that Brett Kavanaugh is just flat out denying that he was there. It's not, sometimes we hear stories like, oh my God, we were kids and I think I must have behaved badly because you can explain a story where it's a long time ago. I must have thought she was interested and I guess I was wrong. That we're not getting that. We're getting the I wasn't there, so
When she has never been specific, about the party. She hasn't given enough details.
Right, that
So
wasn't in the letter. I don't think so. I'm more asking.
There were not.
This isn't a quiz.
There were not specific enough details. She never mentioned where this party was. So for him to say I wasn't even at the party.
Yeah, there's
doesn't make
another
sense.
another man who's accused who he's just like, yeah, I'm staying out of this.
Judge.
Yeah.
Judge.
Yeah. Mr. Judge is well, lest ye not be.
judging.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, he did judge. He said, I've never seen him behave that way.
And,
Right.
Well, he basically said he didn't want to be involved with it. He wanted to stay out of it.
Can you cut through the lawyerese? And if he says, I've never seen him behave that way, is it because his eyes were closed? Is that what it means? It's just a question. It's just a question.
And also the 65 women who signed the letter saying that they are on his side, they did that before it was released what this was for, and 2 of them have walked it back at this point.
Yeah.
It's so funny how quickly they can act on some things. Congress is like so slow on things.
Right.
But, need a letter signed by 65 women.
We'll have it
We
done.
can make that
Done.
happen
He's
in
a
a
great
week.
guy.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the same thing of like why they waited so long to not fill the seat when they decided that, oh no, it's an election year for the president, so Obama shouldn't be able to pick a new Supreme Court. They let that sit for over 400 days, but here they are trying to ram this through before the midterms. And the thing that's going to be extra difficult is they have a very limited window right now. So if Kavanaugh doesn't go through or he decides to withdraw his name, they're now going to be up against a wall to be able to find a new person. I'm sure they've got a bunch of people vetted, but to get that person out there, go through all their records, go through the Judiciary Committee, and then be able to go for a vote before you get to the election is going to be a little bit challenging if they don't do it in the next couple weeks. So now you're already kind of walking a fine line to where you may not be able to appoint someone. And in that case, if the Democrats win the House, they're not going to get anybody through at that point. So, and then of course, if they do by chance get the Senate, which is about the same percentage of Trump winning in 2016 is what they have estimated for the Senate. I think it's like 33%. I mean, if they get the Senate, then there's definitely not going to be a justice picked. The only thing they would try to do is maybe try to ram it through during a lame duck session, but I think that would upset a lot of people knowing that they voted for Democrats. Kind of the same thing we're saying, like if you're waiting for an election result, then you can't now be a hypocrite again and try to ram somebody through Congress for a Supreme Court lifetime position if the voters voted for the other party. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out in the next week or two.
Yeah.
So working under the assumption that both of them are appear and testify next week, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it is, Chelsea, what sort of happens if they just both give 2 differing accounts? Is there just the general vote is held amongst the judiciary? What happens next, basically, once we hear this testimony, regardless of what of what we hear? What happens next?
Well, the Judiciary Committee will vote, but however they vote, even if some Republicans vote no, the vote still goes to the entire Senate, and those same people on that committee can vote the same way or differently than they did in committee. So it's possible that a Republican will vote no in committee and vote yes when it's the Senate-wide vote. But it would be amazing if like Jeff Flake or some, because he was already saying, I don't know, I really want to hear from this woman. I don't think it would be.
Yeah, he's saying that he wouldn't vote for Kavanaugh right now based on this. I think that depending on testimony, who knows what he decides then. But at this point, he's saying that. And then there were the Lisa Murkowski and there were a few other.
Bob Corker was also, but also Bob Corker and Jeff Flake are not running again, so they should be able to have.
They can vote however they want.
This should be their
moment,
John
like their
McCain
John McCain
thumbs
moment.
down
Yes,
moment.
it should be, but so far we've seen a lot more talk than action, especially from Jeff Flake. So,
but this is a big one.
No, it is, but
This
it remains to be
is
seen
huge.
if they actually would stand up or not.
No.
They're not running again.
And I think even public sentiment changes a little bit, and the pressure changes on the female senators, Collins and Murkowski, because I know even for me, this feels like a whole nother level on this abortion issue, because it's not just abortion, it's birth control. Like abortion, okay, that's one thing. I understand the hatred of it, but if you come near my birth control, I will.
Why did you look at me? I'm not going anywhere near your birth control. I am not interested.
But now that takes my I wouldn't want to call it rage, but my like, oh no, to a whole new level. So I would imagine that more women would put pressure on Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, and that they would actually, both of them are, pro-choice Republicans, that they might feel even more like, oh geez, I mean, this might go after even birth control. More of my constituents are really going to be up in arms about this, and I should be really careful, because if that's how this goes, I don't know. I think women will all band together and just have a sex boycott or something, and no sex until birth control.
I don't quite follow how any of that actually happens. But
Assuming that there is some way that they go after birth control, not only overturning Roe v. Wade, but overturning the right to access to birth control.
Okay.
If they somehow try and get that far in, that what would the response from women be? And my mind goes to, okay, we're going to band together and just hold out.
Cut it off.
And no sex for anyone unless we're giving our birth control back. I mean, this is just kind of where my mind
your
went with this
protest.
whole thing. Yeah.
Right, although I don't know that outright banning of birth control is the issue. It always comes up in terms of there are certain employers that say like Catholic-based organizations don't feel like they want to be compelled. It's always sort of these subtleties and things like that. But you're saying if they just are you saying that there's the fear just for you that they're going to just outlaw birth control? I
mean, that I saw articles and stuff about that coming up, about whether he would attack the right to access to birth control, whether he would side with employers. I was reading about a woman who waited for marriage to have sex, is very Catholic, but still, once she got married, she and her husband decided, we're not ready for kids yet. I would like to use birth control, and she was denied. So, yes, my mind started going to, oh wow, if they would restrict access, make employers and insurance companies not need to provide it, I would be raging on a whole new level.
That doesn't seem like a Supreme Court issue at this point. It would have to reach that, right? I mean, I think.
Same thing even with Roe v. Wade. It's not like some people make it sound like the moment Brett Kavanaugh steps onto the Supreme Court, if God forbid he does, then the next day Roe is overturned. That's not how it works. A case would have to work its way through the courts and be before the Supreme Court, where the issue of Roe or any of the progeny cases, the cases that came after that, were at issue, and then they would decide on that issue that they are going to overturn precedent. And it could. This guy is 53. That gives him a long time to be on the court and perhaps to hear other cases more along the lines of like the Hobby Lobby, where employers want to deny access.
Well,
to
if recent history is any indication, you said he's 53. He will be on the Supreme Court for 40 years, is what that probably means, considering how long people stick around. Maybe even 50. That's sort of the thing about the Trump legacy is that, look, whether it's Brett Kavanaugh or it's the next guy, and let's be honest, it's going to be a guy, the next one.
There isn't going to be a next one.
He'll nominate somebody.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean after
if Brett Kavanaugh for some reason this has to quietly go away, he's going to then get somebody else. He'll still get
from the Federalist Society, equally conservative.
Right, but then the point is, what's going to happen as far as him actually, that person getting on the bench? Because again, we're talking about the timelines, and depending how the Congress is made up after election day, then that changes the whole calculus there.
If the Senate is Democrat controlled, they could just keep knocking down all these guys until the whole Federalist Society runs out of people, and then, I don't know, go to our revolutions list or something. I don't know.
How confident are we as a panel that the Democrats are going to overthrow, take over the Senate? Because
it's
pretty low.
It's pretty low. Like I said, it's around 30%, a little under that. But it's even if you have the House, then it makes it a lot more difficult for anything to really move through.
Right, but
except on a Supreme Court nomination.
If they don't take the Senate, then we'll probably just have to pull the plug on your impeachment clock, because if it's going to be the Republican Senate, it doesn't matter what the House does.
Well,
Because you can't
Yes.
can't
Oh,
actually
actually-
remove him from
Impeachment-
office.
Wait, we should ask
Yeah, but it
Scott
depends.
to clarify. Is it when the House votes to impeach, or you think that the Senate is going to?
That's a great point. What is the impeachment clock actually counting down towards?
To when the House
yes, I
votes?
mean when it's impeachment in
Oh,
general.
okay. But
the
he can
point-
still not be removed as president because that would have
Well,
to be the Senate. And it's in
again,
2/3 of the Senate.
It does. It takes 67, but the point is it depends what comes out, what happens, and what Republicans that may be up again on 20 would feel more reluctant to keep him in. So it really depends what happens. And also, like I've always said all along, I think he would resign sort of a la Nixon before an impeachment anyways if enough stuff comes out. Because let's be honest too, if they take the House, the Democrats are going to constantly have hearings and be taking people from his administration up there, and he's going to have a harder time getting anything
Right. It's
accomplished.
like how the Republican House very regularly held the vote to repeal Obamacare,
Mm-hmm. Right.
even though they knew that they weren't going to actually get it
Right.
repealed. But it was like, say, hey, we keep voting to
Yeah.
get rid of it. So it would basically be that sort of a thing.
Right,
It's like
bring
that-
people up for hearings and put them under oath and have them testify, and so the next thing you know is that's what's going to be going on.
Which is
So-
good because my feeling is that too much gets done in Washington now. So we should get some more. We should have some more safeguards to prevent things from being done. Anyway, I think that it'll be very interesting. A week from now, we'll have a lot more to say about this. Whether the hearings happen, they could still be going on when we do the show next week. So we'll keep team coverage going on of that. But let us know in the chat if you're watching live or if you're watching the archive version, what you think about all of this. And I see some of our friends in the chat, so feel free to chime in. Let's talk about still sort of interesting is the trade war, and China has earlier today decided to have $60 billion in tariffs of their own. These are such crazy amounts of money that it reaches a certain point where I'm like, are those real numbers? Like when you hear what the national debt is, and it's like trillions or quadrillions of dollars. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know that. I can't count that high. Like I wouldn't know how to do that. So when we hear this, Scott, what do you think about what the actual impact is, short term, but more long term? I think is where we would feel it, right?
Right, like long term, like we think as we approach the holiday season and you start thinking about gifts and you think about electronics and you think about other things that you are used to buying. Like we've said on this panel before, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're going to have things made here in the country and still be able to get things at a low cost. And that goes across electronics,
Or as
vehicles.
low.
Right, or as low. You're right.
Ridiculously,
Clothes.
yeah.
You can't expect to have it both ways by saying you're going to give everything having it made here and then be able to have it very cheap. And the tariff thing is again something he has no knowledge on basic economics, and
But we've all
that
got
this
so
is
much
gonna
more
work.
money, though, because of this tax plan.
Right, of course.
Where our pockets are
So
overflowing,
now we can
afford
spend those
to
extra
buy.
costs. Yes, we can absorb those extra
It's a great
costs.
point. I don't know about you, but I've got $60 billion extra dollars. So
I
the fact that,
got a quadrillion.
yeah, so the fact that China's
I
going
just
to
wrote a check to myself for a quadrillion, so I'm good.
that must have been nice.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Wages still the same as like 20 years ago, taking into account inflation. So yes, very great sarcasm there by Tamra, because you would think that with everybody, the economy doing so well and everybody's making so much money, that everybody would be making so much money, but they're not, and nobody can explain why. I think that's very interesting.
Well, Kevin Hassett explained.
This is in relation to what you asked
Yeah,
last week.
so last week's panel, I specifically said, how about some details as to how the economy is doing better? And I neglected to watch the press briefing from the previous day where Kevin Hassett, who's the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, specifically gave a PowerPoint presentation showing us exactly how Trump has made the economy do a lot better.
I missed the PowerPoint.
I was going to say, you got Chelsea's excitement. She's like, wait, there's a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, because
There
I
were several
caught,
charts.
I caught a few minutes of the of answering questions, by the way, which he was so excited to do.
Oh, my gosh.
It was like his favorite moment of his life.
He's a big
he
old
was like,
dweeb.
you
Going to know that. You're right there.
I mean, he was more
Two questions. Well, the
bubbly
next person's going to have three questions.
than a high school cheerleader. Like, this just totally made his life. And one interesting comment that I remember he made, but I didn't quite fully understand, is that a journalist asked, is this economy really just the result of a sugar high, which is kind of how I've been looking at it, where people know, basically there's no regulations because even if they are on the books, they know that nobody's going to come after them. So people are just kind of doing what they want. They know that, no, the police have, taken a rest, and that they've got these tax cuts. So they've got more money, and then they're doing the buybacks. And so all of this is not real value added to the economy. This is just like a sugar high.
Yeah.
And he was explaining, no, that's not true because of the places that capital have been invested. But then I didn't hear any further details on where exactly he says companies have been investing, and therefore we're going to see the fruits of this in the long
Ultimately,
term.
companies have been investing in their businesses, which is true, but that is not a direct result of Trump stimulating the economy. What that is that the oil industry is doing better than they were 4 years ago. So because the oil and gas industries are back on track, they make up 40% of our corporations, and them reinvesting into their own infrastructure is what is accounting for this business investment that Hassett was touting at this, and also what is specific to the Trump administration, and the only thing that is specific to the Trump administration is small business optimism, which means small businesses are being more productive and more active and more in bigger investments because they have the optimism of Trump supporting them, which, to be fair, they did not have with Obama because of, for example, the time that you didn't build this speech that went out of hand, which that's not what he was saying. But it was things like that where small business owners didn't feel that Obama had their best interest at heart, the way that they do feel that Trump has their best interest
I
at
totally
heart.
roll my eyes at that, because what I think is that many of these small business owners blame it on regulation, when really it's the fact that there's these huge, ginormous corporations that make it impossible for them to break into the market or sustain themselves.
I mean, well, it's interesting that just specifically a president that talks to small business owners and is specifically, whether it's true or not, putting it out there that he supports small business, just spouting that rhetoric is enough to stimulate small businesses to. That's why it's called small business optimism. They're more optimistic. They're investing in their business, even though financially they don't have any more money to invest, but they have the optimism to think that this is going to work out in their favor. So that
And my anecdotal story, I'm like, I don't think so. I think this started, as this side hustle economy, and then people have just been doing well on growing those into something. I don't know if this was. I don't feel, I guess, from my own observation, where I know people starting their own businesses, it started as this side thing from their job, and then they've been able to put more time and energy into it. But I guess I don't know.
But this is investment. This isn't
This
return.
is just this is
isn't
emotional.
return.
You're not talking about actual. This is just the emotional. People are emotionally feeling things are good.
The nature of economics is we don't know results for years down the line. So we don't know we can't say right now if they are seeing returns on their investments. We don't know, right. Ultimately, in accordance with what Kevin Hassett said in his, and what critics are saying of the way that he mined his data for those, most people are saying that we are no better off than we were in 2015, 2016, when Obama was still in office. That was the height of economic growth. That was the height of wage increase, and we are nowhere better than we were in 2015 and 2016. So even though we are still maintaining that coast, and optimism is higher because Trump toots his own horn so much, and that really works wonders for him. I mean, it really does. So
I think people look to the stock market too much. I think
Well, they
as
do.
a barometer.
They use that as a barometer, and you're right. That's not the overall barometer, and that's what people are looking at. And people are thinking, oh, and I know what's going to happen already. Is Democrats take control of Congress, and inevitably we know that what goes up must go down, and that the economic cycle is going to eventually slow, and
Next
then it'll be the
year-
great thing that Republicans will then, and Trump will blame the Democrats, say, see, if we had Republicans in Congress, we would be having this great economy, but it's all because of them. It's their fault.
But
and,
I want people to start reading these articles now that I'm reading about that are, all of the signs of a recession are starting already, or economists are saying we are for sure due for some kind of correction recession.
Right, because you're like,
Probably next year, maybe
definitely in
push it to 20,
2020,
but
yeah.
it is going to happen, and it's probably going to happen big. So I want people to see that those articles, the economists are already calling it right now. Remember that we only know a recession has hit when it's 18 months old. You know, all of these indices that economists read take 18 months. So it's like when they say the inflation rate today is 3%, that was actually what has been the last 18 months. So
Right,
there's
and
a lag period.
And it takes a couple quarters before you can officially say you're in a recession anyway. So now you're looking back at things from a year ago and then saying, okay, now we had 2 quarters that were now made it
But
officially a
already
recession.
debt levels are just astronomically high. Defaults are getting back up there again. All the signs.
student
And our
loans numbers,
wages
the
are
weight,
not
yeah.
increasing at the rate that
At all,
they need to
basically.
be.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something we have to look out for.
We forgot about Christian.
No,
Especially.
I just was horrified because I started thinking about that Toad from Super Mario Brothers again, and I couldn't hear anything you guys were saying. But Chelsea, to your point about the economy sort of being a sugar high right now, is that good all natural cane sugar, or is it high fructose corn syrup? And I use that because
Wow, I am
one of those is like, okay, you could come down from it and it might actually be better for the economy.
No,
but
it
the
is
high
a
fructose.
high glycemic,
Ooh.
toxic, poisonous,
I knew I was speaking your language.
high fructose corn syrup. Yeah.
One of the
Well played, though. Thank you for that
thank you.
opportunity.
Or you could say it's it's an organic, rare hibiscus leaf that's
Can we get
from the
agave in
Amazon that is only available to the highest echelon of people that shop at Whole Foods and not at all available to
Oh, yeah.
your average Trader Joe's shopper.
I mean, Trader Joe's, I shop at Food for Less. But what I wanted to touch on before we ran out of time, we only have a couple of minutes, is this Paul Manafort. And there's this idea that, he knows a lot. But I don't know, Scott, we always talk on the show about how long Watergate took and everything. My indication is if he knew something amazing, this whole thing would have unfolded a lot differently. Chelsea, do you think he's sitting on some amazing knowledge? Because I don't. I think that he's got some interesting things that might hurt some people, but I don't think he's got, I don't think he has like a thumb drive that has the P tape of Trump on it. At least I hope not.
I think I see this a little bit different than
Okay,
you do.
that's why I wanted to bring it up before we ran out of time.
I see that the government, the government basically won that last case, even though they convicted him on, 8 only of, there were still 11 that he got off on.
And they were, but those were what, hung
Got
jury?
off on.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
Minus.
Yes, it's hung jury, but off by
he wasn't
one
he wasn't found
juror.
innocent
Right,
on them.
one
They
juror.
were just like,
Right.
we can't
so
rule
he's
on
convicted
these.
of 8, and those other 11 were just one person away.
Right.
So, the government won, and the government was probably primed to do just as well in this next case. I think, and I told my little personal story of knowing somebody who knows him, who got a call from him asking for money. I think that the situation is that he's run out of money, and he doesn't see that his chances are all that great at this next trial, and the government could probably pretty well easily win this other case, but the reason that they're cooperating, or not the government's cooperating, the reason why they're allowing a deal to go through, I think, is because the Manafort has something that is of enough value to them that they would cut a deal. I don't think that. I mean, they had him on all the basically on everything, and that they easily
So the fact
could
that they're
have.
willing to make a deal at all, but if it were something catastrophic to President Trump, would he get Vince Fostered as some people might say. What? It's a thing. It's out there.
I don't know. I don't get the reference.
We'll talk about it next week. But
You know, I was gonna. That whole thing reminded me of Clinton Cash, right?
Oh my God, Clinton Cash!
You know,
we haven't talked about it in so long.
And I thought that maybe we should all do a field trip together
And
to
watch
go
Clinton
see,
Cash?
No, and to see Michael Moore's.
I'm not interested.
Michael Moore's movie Fahrenheit 11/9, and we can all do a good. We could talk about that movie as much as we talked about Clinton Cash.
We did a lot of airtime refuting Clinton Cash.
I liked some Michael Moore movies. The last couple have been a little tougher, but I'd be open-minded, and that'd be fun if we all went together, the whole gang. But
Yeah, they're doing screenings tomorrow.
I don't believe you.
What? Wait,
It would be
excuse
fun
me.
if we all went to a
Wait, Chelsea,
movie together.
Will you shame me if I eat popcorn?
No.
Okay, then fine. That's all I care about then. As long because if I can't eat popcorn,
Have
then I don't want to
ever
go.
we have popcorn around here?
Oh, yeah,
You
we
see
have
me
popcorn.
stuffing my
Yeah.
face with popcorn.
Well, it's different because when you stuff your face, it's not like stuffing an entire butterball turkey like I do. Anyway, we are out of time. But thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. Thanks to our whole panel, and there's obviously a lot to keep an eye on for next week. And until then, you can follow me at Christian DMZ. Chelsea, where do people find you?
At Chelsea Galicia.
And Tamra.
Follow me on Twitter, HeyTamra_, and subscribe to my YouTube, Hey Tamra.
And Scott.
You can follow me on Twitter, basically calling Donald Trump an orange clown at SMan80.
And any interaction with Mitch McConnell this week?
A few things here.
It's only Tuesday, so plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Calling
Thanks
him a
so much
hypocrite.
to everybody, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.